ready for the fight. No more hearts and steadfast pride. Detroit spirit, we wear it white. Feel the drive, hear the crowds embrace. Rock on, Detroit Lions will rise. With our hearts full of dreams and the fire in our eyes. From the past to the future, we'll claim our own. In the home of the brave, we'll proudly have grown. In the city, where the roar meets the night, the Lions charge, ready for the fight. Noble hearts and steadfast pride. Detroit spirit, we wear it white. Feel the drive, hear the crowds embrace. Rocked on, Detroit Lions will rise. Rocked on, Detroit Lions will rise. With our hearts full of dreams and the fire in our eyes. From the past to the future, we'll claim our own. In the home of the brave, we'll proudly have grown. With every game, we rise and unite.
All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Rise and Grind Morning Show. It is your source for Detroit Lions and NFL news every weekday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. I'm your host, Will Rock, and of course, we're joined by Riley O'Brien this morning. Good morning, Riley. How you doing today?
Good morning, guys. I'm doing very well. Happy to be here. Let's get this party started.
Riley, I think your audio just completely dipped.
Did it dip?
happened.
You can't hear me?
I can barely hear you, buddy. All right, here we go. Try again.
Can you hear me now?
I got you. That was all on my end. So I must have bumped a slider for you. All right. Hey, good morning. Welcome everybody into the chat this morning. I heard we have some more clickbait news to get to today. You know what? I think I'm going to make that a regular segment coming up pretty soon, like each day or whenever it happens. Clickbait news. I'm definitely going to talk about it at some point today. I'm just not sure when. But I'm about to make a phone call. And I'm about to make a phone call because I'm sick of seeing clickbait about the Detroit Lions. I really am. It pains me to see so much bullshit out there and people still buy it. They lap it up like little puppies on Christmas morning. And I don't get it. And I can't stand it. I've been up since 2 a.m. So you know damn well, Riley, I'm ready to rock and roll today.
I don't think I've ever interacted with Will not feeling like, man, you got to bring the energy to keep up with him. And that's maybe the hottest intro we've had to the show, at least since I've been on. So,
hey, I haven't felt I can't even talk right now. I haven't felt the best, obviously. And yesterday, spent a little time with the ER, and they loaded me up with 125 milligrams of steroids and then a bunch of medicine to knock me out. So, was not a good day. But definitely have vertigo. Definitely have water swashing around somewhere in my ears and in the mastoid. And that's not the end of it. At least the neck x-ray was good, but now I have to get an MRI to make sure that nothing has happened. But there's some osteophytes hanging out in the neck that are probably pressing on some nerves, and that's why when I move my head to the left, everything starts to spin. So
the clickbait stuff only hurts that. It only makes it worse. I think
yeah, because I got to crank my head to the left and say, like, what the F, man? What are we doing here? I don't get, what are we doing? Like, come on. Like, are we, and maybe they're just not wanting to be a channel that wants to put out, or can't put out good, solid news and have good, solid conversations. And they have to clickbait to get a bunch of people in, to charge them a bunch of ad money and get a bunch of views. Like, for me, views, great, cool. When they happen, they happen. If you want good, solid news, you're going to be here. Unfortunately, not everybody has figured out that this is probably one of the most transparent, factual, honest, and truthful Detroit Lions content out there. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. There's a couple other really good ones. Crunch Time, really good. Den 313, really good. And there's others. Like Chat Sports, he does a great job too. So there's plenty of really good content creators out there. You're going to get a different flavor from everybody. But I don't think a lot of us really try to promote clickbait. But there's a few that do. Anyway, I'll move away from it for now. If we have time to get to it, I will. I am going to make a phone call or send a text, though, because I want some information. So let's get it kicked off with NFL news and rumors today. And welcome in. Good morning to the chat. Appreciate you guys joining us this morning. What a hell of a weekend, huh? Jared Goff finally gets somewhat of an MVP, I guess. Not the MVP that he wanted, but the NFC dishes out a three-peat in the, to the AFC in the Pro Bowl. And the question is, will Patrick Mahomes dish out a three-peat to the NFL this weekend? So will Patrick Mahomes push right back against the NFC? We'll see. I guess before we go into it, what's your quick take on that?
Yeah, I know Austin Cunningham of Talking Football's got a lot emotionally invested on the game. It's going to be interesting. I know you've done a lot of stat work already, and you'll go over that and show why Philadelphia should be a heavy favorite, but it's Patrick Mahomes and the whole cliche, if he's on your team, you've got a chance. It's the weirdest thing how he gives them a fighting chance every time he takes the field. He's arguably the best quarterback of all time already. So
God,
we'll
I'm
see
gonna
how
throw up. I'm gonna throw up with you saying that.
I feel like it's almost inarguable. God, I wish he was the Lions quarterback. But hey, I'm happy with Jared Goff. Like you said, he got a MVP. Not the one that we wanted, but better than nothing.
I don't know. Jared Goff won the accuracy contest in the Pro Bowl. I mean, I think that says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, he had a good run here. And then shoot, man, we saw Jahmyr Gibbs get an interception. Is there anything he can't do? He's like the Will Rock of running backs. Switches over, plays defensive back, does it all. So yeah, it was an interesting and cool week. I didn't get too into the Pro Bowl. It's hard for me to do, but Lions showed out. So we'll take that.
I love Derek Lewis's comment, and he says, clickbait is money, Will. But here's what I'll tell you. Clickbait is actually not money in this game of YouTube. So I watch some very good channels now that have 500,000+ subscribers, million+ subscribers, and they don't do clickbait at all. Never have. Beast never did. I watched the whole documentary on Beast this weekend. He never did any clickbait. Everything he did was real and live and honest and open, and he was just this nerdy, goofy kid. He said it himself. I'm not saying that for him. That just could barely communicate with people, but he found doing videos. And he just did it as real as he could. And look where it grew. So clickbait is not money in this game. What's money in this game is your subscribers and listeners, your audience members, knowing what they're going to get when they click. That's what's money. And then beyond that, it's your audience that's listening to subscribe to your channel because they know what they're getting is factual. And then to share it with somebody so that they can hear it, and then they share it. And that's what's money, is the sharing. Right? And getting it out there, putting it on your social, and making sure that good channels survive above all else. That's what money is to me. Money is not dollar bills. It's doing it the right way. So, Peter Van Larhoven, the name of the store that sells Lion merch that we should visit. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of good ones at Pro Sports Zone in Livonia. Pro Sports Zone in Livonia, man. That's the only place where you should go get, your material, any of your Lion stuff. Good dude over there. John Yu does a lot for the community. Has wonderful selection of merch over there. Hopefully we'll be partnering up again this season to do a few things this next season. So let's talk about this Pro Bowl for a hot minute. So Kansas City Chiefs, obviously they're gearing up to be the NFL's first ever three-peat in the Super Bowl. But it just so happened that Jared Goff and the NFC had to be the first three-peat first, right? Or had to be the three-peat first, and they three-peated in the Pro Bowl this weekend. Jared had a good week, had a good day. I mean, he threw touchdowns. He threw 3 touchdowns in the win. Was the offensive MVP for the NFC, while Minnesota Viking corner Byron Murphy won the defensive MVP. He logged a pick 6 to help the NFC over the top in that game. But look, the score in this game was just crazy. But it wasn't really close. I think the AFC was just allowed to kind of trickle back into this one in the end, but it really wasn't close. So big ups for Jared Goff this weekend and holding down, and Eli Manning holding it down and getting it done for the NFC.
Yeah, it was, and another show out from the LSU receivers. No surprise there, right? But yeah, what was the final 76 to?
It was like 71-63 or something like that.
Yeah,
I don't have
that's
the
like
score
a
in front of me.
basketball. It's like well, in the NBA, that's like a first half these days, but that's like a college basketball game. Score more than football.
Hmm. Maybe that's why there's clickbait trade information going out right now, because the NBA is actually having real trades.
Yeah,
Maybe that's why it's happening. Jesus,
up.
man. Okay, so you knew I was going to do it, Riley. You knew I was going to do it. I'm going to check in on the sack totals right now. There's been all this information floating around. Oh, why is my hyperlink not working? All this information floating around about defense wins championships.
Mm-hmm.
And only the teams with the most sacks are going to make it to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Only them, right? Nobody else. And so I'm going to ask, and I'm sure that everybody in the chat already knows, who was the number one team in the NFL this year with the most sacks in the regular season? You guys know?
Anybody's got it.
What's that?
Let's see if anybody's got it here in the chat.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that one. Where do you think the Eagles and the Chiefs line up? If you didn't know what the stats said, just thinking, based on, I guess, the history of the NFL and the playoffs and Super Bowl, where would you think, two of the top teams, the number 1 seed and the number 2 seed, where should they rank, as far as sacks in the NFL? Where do you think they should be? Riley?
Based on what you hear with a lot of channels, right? You would think it's got to be the number 1 and number 2 teams, right? They get the most sacks. That means they hold people to the least amount of points scored. So surely they're going to the Super Bowl, right?
You would think. Now, points scored, I mean, that's a whole different subject, and it's kind of odd, and we'll talk about that too. But your Pittsburgh Steelers, your Philadelphia Eagles, 41 sacks on the season. 41 sacks on the season. They finished 13th best on the season. 13th best. And then the Kansas City Chiefs, 39 sacks on the season. Finished 18th best. Your Detroit Lions had to be way far behind them. I mean, with 16 plus injuries on the defense, all these guys on IR, these guys, they can't get sacks, right? They suck.
Hutch out since week 6.
Right. There's no way they could be even close. 37 sacks. So they're just 2 sacks off of the Chiefs, and they're 4 sacks off of the Eagles. Riley, answer this for me. Does 4 sacks separate you from a Super Bowl today? I mean, is it 4 sacks would have got the Lions into the Super Bowl?
It would not have, no. They could have gotten those 4 sacks in one game and still not won that game.
Exactly, because it happens, right? It happens. Matter of fact, wasn't Jaden Daniels, wasn't he sacked 8 times against the Saints this last year?
That's a good question.
I think he was. And didn't they win that game? Hold on. Sidebar.
Yeah, you're right.
He was sacked 8 times for 37 yards.
8 times.
All right. Commanders.
See some smart
people.
They
won. Hold on. They won the game. The Commanders won the game.
By 1 point.
By 1 point.
Yeah.
20-19. Like I said, keep teams under 20. You win.
Yeah. Can you imagine sacking a guy 8 times and you're on the defensive line, you're on the defensive unit in the locker room post game. You sacked the guy 8 times and you lost the game.
Yeah, that would have to be a travesty. All right, so I'm going to come back. So the overall team was the Denver Broncos. They had where was it? 60, I think they had 60 something.
63.
63. A lot of outside linebacker play, right? They had like, I don't know, I think it was something like 28 sacks just between their linebackers, their 2 outside linebackers. So different style of defense, of course. But the other thing I want to mention in here, since you mentioned points. So points is a big thing. All right? It's a big thing. So even though the Philadelphia Eagles are the 13th best team with sacks, they had 17.8 points per game allowed. right? That's all they gave up. That's
Mhm.
why they're in the Super Bowl, is because they only allow 17.8 points per game. And your Detroit Lions were at like 17-7 for like 8 or 9 or 10 weeks. They were there. And then as the defense kept getting clipped, hit by buses, you name it, those points started to creep back up. And I think they finished right over, I don't know, 20.8 points per game, on the season or whatever.
20.1.
20.1. Man, just
barely over.
Just over.
Yep.
And the Kansas City Chiefs, 19.2 points per game. 19.2 points per game. So this is what I'm going to say. Now, I'm going to put out my early prediction until we get to Friday. Eagles are going to win this game. And they're going to win this game by less than 3 points. I think it's going to be a 3-point win or less. There's no reason why the Eagles can't win this game. So if you look at all these stats and statisticians and everything else, and they say the defense wins championships, well, guess what? This will be the second season in the last 15 Super Bowls, and last year was the first season, that a team with a better defense could end up winning the Super Bowl, and that's a better defense over their offensive ranking. The Eagles are the 7th-ranked offense by points. They are the number 2 offense by rushing yards per game. They're the 4th worst offense in pass yards per game. And that's what's weird, right? I mean, they barely throw in the ball. It's all in the ground game. So if you want to stop the Eagles, you stop the run. You take Saquon out. Is Hurts going to be able to throw the ball downfield? That's the question. They are the 8th in total yards on the season. So depending if you go by total yards or total points, they're right there at the 7th best offense in the league. On the flip side, if you go by points, they're the 2nd in points allowed by defense. They're the 1st in pass yards allowed, and they are the 10th in rush yards allowed per game. Conversely, for the Chiefs, they have the 15th ranked offense. The last time a 15th ranked offense won, I think it was the Giants. Was the last time a 15th ranked offense had won. I could be wrong. I don't have it in front of me. 21st as far as offensive rush yards allowed per game. Offensive rush yards per game on offense. They are 14th in offensive pass yards per game. They're 17th in total yards on the season. On the defensive side of the football, they are 4th in points allowed on the defense. That was at 19.8. They're 8th in rush yards per game allowed. And they are 18th worst pass yards allowed. 9th best in yards per game. Pretty even match. But again, this is going to be whatever team wins, their defense is better than their offense. There's no way to say that it's not true. Well, for the second time in 15 plus years. So, second time, and you can go back further than that. It's like 4 times out of the last 25 Super Bowls that the defense has been better by the rankings, the true ranks, which is how many yards did you produce? How many yards did you not allow? Those are the true ranks. We're not talking PFF. We're talking true ranks for these guys. So based on all that, Riley, what's your response?
I feel like it's going to be, where you say less than 3 points. My immediate thought is this could easily be a game that it's going to come down to whoever has the ball last, right? If maybe Philadelphia goes and gets a field goal, they win by 1, they win by 2. That's how that shakes out. But I just know if there's under a minute left, hell, if there's 30 seconds left and the Chiefs have the ball, even if they don't have a timeout and they only need a field goal, it should be a very entertaining game. I've healed emotionally to the point, with the Lions not participating in the game. I know a lot of people said, I'm not going to watch it. You're going to watch it. Come on. Everybody watches the Super Bowl. I feel like it's going to be whoever has the ball last is going to win the game.
I've got to watch the Super Bowl. I mean, I have to. I have to talk about it the next day.
Yeah.
But, good point in here by Full State Farms where he says that sacks matter more of when they happen in the game. And I completely agree with this. It's not like sacks don't matter. They do. They do matter. But where they really matter is when, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to his point, ending drives on 3rd down versus a first down sack when a team is just going to get a first down 2 plays later. It's the same thing that I've been talking about too. It depends on when. If you sack them on first down, great. You just gave them 3 more downs to get a first down. Can you sack them on 3rd down? And can you get to them on 4th down? That's what really matters. And if you can't, then sacks don't mean squat. They just don't.
The game where Hutch had 5 sacks, it was week 2 against Tampa Bay. And that was one of only 2 regular season games that the Lions lost.
Yeah, big shout out to Brandy Coffee on her 3-month anniversary, joining the Lions faithful level. Congratulations, Brandy. Appreciate you being part of the crew. We'll get you a JMO TD this morning since he's not going anywhere.
Looks, throws. It is complete. There goes JMO right side. He's got the angle to the end zone. 25-20, 15-10, 5, end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions.
Like I did that?
I do. Very, very subtle.
Oh, Benedict Arnold Johnson. Benedict is still poaching our team. He's taking our scraps and he's sending them over to Lake Michigan West Lions over there in Chicago. And I said scraps for a reason. If anybody is worried about Maurice Alexander going to Chicago, we've got bigger fish to fry then. But Ben Johnson yet again has struck where wide receiver Maurice Alexander has signed a reserve futures deal with the Chicago Bears per Aaron Wilson this weekend. And he'll join the new Bears and coach and former offensive coordinator Benedict Arnold Johnson and Antoine Randall L., who coached wide receivers in Detroit. So still poaching. But you know what? Then again, it's not really poaching because, I mean, Maurice doesn't have a contract in Detroit, right? He's a free agent, or he will be. He didn't I think he finished on the practice squad, or maybe he didn't. Either way, when you finish on the practice squad, I mean, you're free. Yeah. When week 18 is done, you're done. When your season's over, it's over. So he can go wherever he wants. So Maurice Alexander has signed a futures deal. He won't be back in Detroit this next season, more than likely, unless he doesn't make it out of training camp and he's just over there spying for us. And, we'll see.
Getting some intel. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right on that, though. If you're not like a guaranteed contract guy, and if the coach is saying, hey, come over here, you got to kind of feel like you're closer to being guaranteed a job. Otherwise, he wouldn't be asking you to join him. So it happens.
See, I like Jay Cruzen, and you're talking about he's watching the refs closely. So earlier, I didn't say this when you were saying how Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback to do it. Not of all time. I mean, he won't be until he can get 8 Super Bowls. But he's a good quarterback that gets a shit ton of help. He gets a ton of help. And I'm sorry, he gets a ton of help. And it's true. I mean, the tape don't lie. It don't lie. You can watch it over and over and over, and you just see these ghosts flying around him that apparently are hitting him, and that's why the refs are throwing the flag, is ghosts. I've never seen something more egregious in my life than the way that these refs... Well, I guess that's not true. I saw it this season with the Lions. But see, there wasn't ghosts that were doing it. It was actually NFL players smacking the crap out of Goff and Laporta and others and not getting any flags. So it's egregious. He got all the help in the world to paint this narrative so that they could make all this money on what's going to be the most watched Super Bowl ever because of a three-peat. And if you don't think those advertising dollars matter, they matter. Now, that might be the biggest. I guess maybe Derek Lewis was right. Maybe clickbait does sell, because this has probably been the biggest clickbait season I have ever seen out of the NFL. You could paint clickbait right over Patrick Mahomes' face, because to me, that's what it means. That's what this season's been all about. Sorry. You can turn on the game to watch the Chiefs and whoever they're playing, and it's clickbait because the Chiefs are going to win. Or they're going to win very close games. There, I said my piece.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, right as the Eagles and the Chiefs each won the NFC and AFC championship games, all I saw on Twitter was, I'm boycotting the Super Bowl. I'm not watching the Super Bowl. I'm not going to watch it this year. And again, I just think come on, guys. Like, we all love football. This is like an insatiable appetite for us. And nobody would have been surprised at the start of the year if you said, hey, in February, you're going to be watching the Chiefs and Eagles. It is what it is, but they certainly draw eyes. No question about it for the Chiefs.
Moonscar says we have to stop the cheat, Pete. Whatever that means. Does that mean don't watch? You boycott the NFL? boycott them for Super Bowl? I kind of have to watch. I mean, what the hell am I going to talk about the next day? I got to watch, and I'm going to press record because I'm going to record it through OBS so I can have all the clips that I need for these penalties and not rely on the NFL to try to hide it.
You already are banking on them happening.
Oh, it's going to happen. Maybe it won't. I don't know. It has to happen. There's going to be at least one. Look, the refs, if you miss one or two, okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. But if you're missing one or two and you haven't missed one or two before in this game, and it's the end of the game, that's where I have a problem. Mm-hmm. That's where I have a big problem. If you let them play tight all game long, and now there's 3 minutes left in the game, and Patrick Mahomes is driving down the field, which, by the way, he's the only quarterback in NFL history to have a perfect record in come from behind wins or having the ball the last possession of a game. Refs, maybe? Just saying. Look how many penalties are on those calls. So
his playoff record is insane. It's like 17-3. 17 times you've played 20 playoff games and you've won 17 of them. It's hard to wrap the mind around. And
I'm not saying he's not a great quarterback, because he is. It's just there's been enough evidence out there now where I think a lot of us are like, okay, enough's enough. Like other people, other teams can win. You're still going to make great money. Could you imagine if the Lions won the Super Bowl this year? Not only would it have been the most expensive Super Bowl in history, the cheapest ticket would have been about $15,000.
You think 15?
15 would have been, because it was $5,000 just a couple weeks ago. And if the Lions were going, that ticket would have tripled. It would have tripled. If the Lions would have won the NFC, championship game, there's no way that I would have tried to have waited to buy a ticket. I would have rather bought a ticket, and if they lost, sell it.
Sure. Yeah.
Because if it triples, then what am I going to do? You know what I mean? I mean, that's a lot of money to go to a game. And I get it. It might be the first, last, and only Lions game, but that would have to be, yeah. Our Derek Lewis says, I've been vindicated. Thanks, Will. All right, Lions news and rumors up next. There's not much going on right now. There's just not. I mean, the first thing, obviously, with Ben Johnson getting Maurice Alexander. Obviously, that's not a whole lot. Obviously, Tanner Engstrand being done this past weekend. We knew that was coming as soon as they hired Morton and Shaw. I mean, we knew that once Shaw came aboard that Engstrand's days were done. But how about this one? St. Brown. St. Brown and Craig Reynolds. Part of the St. Brown podcast this weekend. I don't know if I can play this or if this is going to get hit. It's 8 minutes long, too. Hold on a sec. Let me mute it real quick.
Let's see who we got in the chat. Peter Van Larhoven, Jay Cruz and Trace, Tribe, Scott Young, Moonscar Blade, King SJ, all the OGs, all the originals, the regulars.
Yeah, I think I can put this on. I don't know if it's going to get hit or not. I haven't checked to see if there's a setting on his site, and I probably should, and I doubt that there is because he's so heavily influenced by my ad stuff's not on. He's so heavily influenced by sponsors, so
yeah. Morning Mike
might get hit. All right, I'm going to come back to that one. We're going to come back to St. Brown. I got to check something.
Sure.
Let's move on to, well, shoot, that would be moving on to Arnold. All right, I can't move on because Arnold's going to take a minute. So we're going to get into the Lions 2024 redraft segment today. We're going to be doing rounds 1 and 2. So we're going to be talking about Terry and Arnold and Ennis Rake-Straw. And we're going to be doing it weekly. I think Monday, Wednesday, Friday is what we set out to do. So 3 and 4 on Wednesday, 5 and 6, and 7. If I don't think we had a 7th last season. So 5 and 6 on Friday. And then in between that, it's free agency talk and what free agents make sense, breaking down the defense first. I started it off last week with linebackers. We'll move on this week to corners and safeties. I kind of already said my piece about a safety, but we'll talk about it again. And then, of course, defensive line and edge and what makes sense, again, for free agents. So all that's going to be every single day this week. There's going to be some bigger segment going on. We have 2 big segments today. One is on redraft, and the other one's on Calvin Shepard, and kind of a deep dive into Calvin Shepard. And I found a lot of moving pieces in this. So we'll talk about all that and more when we get back. Let me take a quick ad break so I can look something up. Better the Hunt Technologies and C3 Mitts, the ultimate hunting and multi-use glove system for hunters and outdoor enthusiasts. Now, C3 Mitts are designed to keep your bare hand protected and warm no matter what the weather throws at you. The patented attachment system was designed to keep your hand on target with the ultimate feel of comfort, confidence, and control. The triple layer barrier of moisture wicking material combined with 200 grams of thin-slit insulation locks in the heat, but not the moisture. That hot hands pocket adds extra heat when the temps dip below freezing. Rain or snow, no problem for C3 Mitts. The durable outer shell is water resistant and windproof, shielding your hands from the elements. C3 Mitts has solved the cold, stiff, and shaky hand syndrome that all hunters have faced, causing you to miss opportunities on your hunt. Whether you're stalking your prey, chopping wood, or simply enjoying a winter's day, C3 Mitts have got you covered. So this winter, keep your hands warm and your adventures going strong with C3 Mitts. C3 Mitts, warmth, comfort, confidence, and control. I guarantee it, or your money back. Make sure you visit c3mitts.com right after the show. Gotta do something about that voice on that ad, man. It got super deep on me somehow. Okay, so it does say that it does allow it on their settings. So I'm gonna roll it. If it's somehow it gets clipped, then I guess it gets clipped, and then hopefully the stream just comes right back. But St. Brown, Craig Reynolds. Story is these guys didn't get along at all. And you know, I kind of saw this coming with St. Brown because I always felt the same as what Craig Reynolds was saying. That St. was just really cocky. Like I always noticed that he was really cocky on and off the field. He always seemed like he was cocky, but you know what? He also put the work in. And he's confident, right? He's overconfident. And I think that spills across to a lot of guys that you don't know yet as cockiness. And I think there's a big difference between, you know, being cocky and confident, or what I call confidently cocky. That's kind of how I view myself, like confidently cocky. So I wasn't surprised to hear, you know, at least someone speak up, Craig Reynolds, that he thought that St. Brown was cocky, and he said that he was going to go and pummel the dude during practice. Which was hilarious. So yeah. Let me play this. Let me play this, and we'll just hope that it all goes for the best. All right, let's make sure I've got it on here. Make sure we've got audio turned on. That's always the big one.
Let us know in the chat if you get the audio of it.
Okay. I'm just thinking about when I first met you. This shit was funny.
Bro, EQ, I hated this man. Oh yeah? My God. I did not fuck
Tell me why. Tell me why. Bro, don't get me started on you, bro.
He had the silver hair, first of all. I thought that shit was corny, bro. I'm like,
wait, did you get there his rookie year? Did you get there his rookie year or no? Yes, bro. Yeah, he came during training camp. I was a rookie. Okay.
And they was glazing him in film.
Who was glazing? Please, bro, can you please say where was the glazing? I want to know. I truly want to know.
Bro, you asked me a question. Can I finish, bro? Cut me off and shit.
Love it. Shut your fucking mouth, nigga.
bro.
Oh, wow.
I can't. I'm pulling up to LA.
It's
I can't
amazing.
wait. All right.
So
Anyway,
genuine.
EQ. Like I said,
Yeah.
he sits like kind of behind me in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Silver hair. Every day they just glazing this dude. I'm like, bro, he's not even doing nothing because he's not playing in like really in the preseason game.
You're just running out
So
routes,
I'm
huh?
like, bro, I'm like one-on-ones. I'm not really seeing much, like, but they just sucking him. And I'm like, bro,
How?
and he was cocky. He was cocky, bro. I'm like, bro, I think by the end of the season I might rumble him. I really think about it.
How are they?
I thought about
How are they
We
sucking?
play on the same side of the ball.
How are they sucking me? I want to know.
Bro, just everything you did, bro.
You can't give an example, Nimi. You can't.
Bro, it was like 5 years ago, but I'm just telling you what I thought. Like, this is what I remember.
Yeah.
And like we really didn't talk because I was like on P Squad. He thought he was the shit. Like whole
This
rookie
nigga
year,
loves the
every
cap.
day talking about. I remember the dudes that drafted me, all that shit. Like the 200 balls, like
4th round,
bro. Like bro, we get it, bro. Like your life is that hard, bro. We get it. And then the Broncos game, I finally played, and I actually played with him. I was like, I mean, I give him respect. Like it took to like week 12 for me to earn my respect.
Just straight out routes and shit, huh?
There is nothing better than Amon-Ra's face expressions in here, just like you said, Riley. I think that's great. You know, he's taken that humble pie for a moment.
Yeah.
He's hearing it. He's hearing it from a teammate. And I got a question that we'll come back to. Does Craig Reynolds make it back on this team this year? We'll come back. I don't want an answer right now, but I'd love it in the chat and in the comments below in the live stream as well. So does Craig Reynolds come back? What I love about his brother, though, is he's constantly talking crap about Amon-Ra St. Brown, yet he's never done anything in the league.
Yeah.
He's got that jealousy, hate all over him. And you know, look, Amon-Ra, it took him a minute to take flight. You know, it was about 9 weeks through the first season. He's like the last wide receiver left, and he finally starts to take flight. They built their relationship, and then, you know, they both took off together, him and Goff. But I always thought that Amon-Ra was cocky, and I think it's hilarious when you hear it from Craig too, how he talks about, man, I remember all the guys in front of me getting picked, and come on, dude, like really, how many times are we gonna hear it? I get it, but anyway, what's your thoughts on the clip?
You know, my favorite thing about that whole clip is my single favorite play from, I guess, 2 years ago now was the game at Tampa when Craig Reynolds was the one that sprung forward and sprung that block for St. Brown on the touchdown. It's so cool to see the camaraderie.
Full circle.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And because you can tell it's no different than you and a buddy just, you know, giving each other a hard time. Right. They're professional athletes, but you know, they're just like us. You can sense like Craig genuinely like didn't like him at first. He didn't like him, but you get on the field, you go through some things together, and then it's amazing how, and that's what's so beautiful about football. It can forge and you can have incredibly strong friendships, bond. And that I just, the whole time I'm watching that, I'm like, this is so ironic because Reynolds is the one that sprung that block for him at Tampa Bay last year when Tampa was wearing those cream jerseys. And it's just so awesome to see. It's genuine. You can see he did not like Amon-Ra at first.
Creamsicle jerseys, man.
Yeah.
I actually dig the creamsicle jerseys, even though they're ugly as all get out. I kind of dig them a little bit.
Oh, I love them. I love them.
So, yeah, it's funny. You know, things come first, full circle in everything, whether it's sports or your career or your marriage or friendship or whatever. Things always seem to come full circle if you put the work in. And obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown put the work in. And so is Craig Reynolds. I mean, he is stuck around on this team because of the hard work that he puts in. And I think that block, obviously, it's a fitting moment where, you know, here this dude can't stand Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he goes and frees him for one of probably the coolest touchdowns we've seen, you know, out of those two, especially the way that block went down. I mean, the dude went flying.
Dude,
and that was Carlton Davis that he blocked. That was Carlton Davis.
My buddy Jack was over at my place, and Caleb was over at my place. Caleb's from Michigan. We were watching the game. That was also J-Mo's first game that year. But that play with Reynolds springing forward, I literally like jumped off the couch. I think I had chills. I was like, dude, that was an amazing play.
Yeah.
And then I had no idea at the time, you know, until we saw this, that Reynolds actually did not like Amon-Ra at first, but
is what it is. Is what it is. So we've got a big segment coming up. Two of them actually, but the first one is the 2024 redraft. We're gonna get into that in just 1 second. So I just want to address a couple of comments here in the chat. So I'm gonna try to make sure that we do this at least every 10-15 minutes. But RP saying that it's funny how they said that they were glazing him, and so the glazing's not a good thing. So they're hating on him on, according to Craig, they were hating on him on Ron the way that he was running routes, and of course his brother peeps in, oh, out routes all the time, out routes, right? And I think he's saying out routes because Amon-Ra doesn't run out routes. He runs in routes. He's always running in to the middle of the field on the majority of plays. Yeah, he runs a few outs, but it's mostly in routes. It's eating over the middle of the field where Amon-Ra lives. So I think that's why his brother is getting on him, because he's not running outside boundary routes. So he's kind of making fun of him that he doesn't do it. He takes the easy cheese, if you want to call it that way, the easy cheese. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, if we could get the likes up on the chat, that'd be great. We've got, I don't know, 90 people watching this morning. I expect it's probably going to be fairly light since we don't clickbait here and it's off season. But yeah, if we can get the likes up, that'd be helpful. What I will do is I'll make sure that we can try to do something with these ads and maybe try to dial them back a little bit on YouTube. If we can't hit the marker of 75 likes every morning, we'll at least try to dial the ads back, because sometimes they can just be horrific. And they just constantly inundate your feed. Let's see if I can make a quick change here. Go ahead, Riley, and then we're going to jump right into the segment here.
For sure. Yeah, this just on that too. It's funny how, you know, he's making fun of Amon-Ra for, he's always listing off all these players that were drafted ahead of him, because he said, you know, bro acts like he's had it out of the mud, but he went to USC, you know. But also from Amon-Ra's standpoint, you're a 4th round pick. Amon-Ra clearly felt like he was drafted a few rounds too late. So yeah, it was a really cool clip. Encourage anybody to watch it in full if you haven't yet. St. Brown's podcast is legitimately good, and EQ does a good job of getting under his skin for sure, or trying to. You can certainly see the brother dynamic.
Okay, I think we're good to go there. All right, so next up, let's talk about Terrion Arnold. So, Riley, now I guess it's the time for us to start, and I know we're way early. I want to put the disclaimer out there that we typically do not evaluate a draft pick until 3 seasons. Like, that is the industry standard. It's always been 3 seasons. Brad Holmes also mentions the same thing. Don't evaluate my guys until their 3rd season. And I think this year you had a few guys that rose to the occasion, right? Josh Paschal, Levi O, just to mention a couple on this Lions squad that really stood up, finally. Derek Barnes stood out last year. Obviously got injured this year. Malcolm Rodriguez stood out. You know, so it sometimes takes a little bit of time to see these guys come in, put the work in, totally change their habits, their body, their eating, and you're learning a professional system. And as long as you can, like Dan Campbell says, as long as you can tread water, right, you're going to stay on this team. And then at some point, you're going to be able to go deeper than anybody else. And that's what you're seeing with these guys in year 3. So just talking Lions 1st and 2nd round today, would we have done anything different?
So let's dive into this. We may not have a clickbait, but I think we've got some excellent content here to review. Now, we know going into round 1 last year, I think if you had done a poll, it was kind of widely known, it was unanimous that the Lions were in need of a cornerback, needed a defensive back. Going into day 1, the Lions were projected to pick at number 29. We know that Brad Holmes eventually traded up with the Dallas Cowboys, moved up from 29 to 24 to select Alabama cornerback Terrion Arnold. Now, some draft analysts viewed Terrion as the number 1 corner in the entire draft. Others had Quinyon Mitchell, but it was 1A and 1B in most cases. Brad Holmes, after the 1st round, when he did his post-draft press conference, he said, "I don't want to say speechless, but overly thrilled how tonight went. It happened to match up the best football player on our board and was an area where we wanted to add one, a cornerback, at some point. Tim Twentyman wrote an article, and he highlighted that a big appeal of Terrion Arnold for the Lions was his ability to track and find the football. And Twentyman also pointed out that Terrion led the SEC in both passes defended, he had 17, and interceptions, he had 5. He also chipped in 63 tackles, 6.5 which were for loss, as well as defended more passes, 26, than games played in his college career, which was 25. So, Will, I'm going to ask you, we have 1 year now of data. What do you think about Brad's decision to trade up from 29 to 24? How do you feel Terrion Arnold played his rookie year, and would you have done anything different than the decision that Brad Holmes ultimately made in trading up and selecting Terrion Arnold?
All right. Well, before I really dive into what I guess my answer is going to be, or my response, I want to know from the chat. I want to know in the comments later on when the people watch this live, or when it's not live, what would they have done? Is Terrion Arnold your pick, no matter what? Was there another corner that you would have taken? Now, keep in mind, we're talking about at pick 24. We're not talking about at 29, even though I will talk about 29. Not that we could have moved up any further because we don't know. So is Terrion your pick, no matter what? I want to know in the comments and in the chat. We'll come back to it. This is a longer segment. So you just have to bear with me on this one because I've got to get through a lot of information and most importantly, do it in a way that I feel, I guess, gives credence to this subject, because this is not an easy subject, right? It's everyone can have an opinion and say, yeah, Brad Holmes took him, and you know what? I trust in the process, and I trust in Brad Holmes. It was the right pick. Okay. But is there anything else that would make you think that it was the wrong pick, or would you have done something different if you were given a chance? Now, hindsight's always 20/20. We know that. It's always 20/20. So here's what I'm going to say. Lastly, just let us know. Just let us know in the chat comments below. But here's what I'm going to say. In the first round, the Lions took Terrion Arnold at pick 24. There have been some shots that have been fired at Terrion and Brad Holmes this offseason so far that I've heard. There's been fans of the Detroit Lions that are saying that they've made mistakes, that Brad Holmes should have never taken Terrion Arnold, should have taken an edge rusher or a linebacker. And I think that's where I'm going to dive in, is let's compare Terrion to some of the other options, and then I'll give you my final take at the end. And I think that's where I'm going to start here, is with Terrion's stats. So Terrion had a productive season. He got off on a rocky start with some penalties. Now, it may shock you that he only had 11 penalties on the season. Only. That is a ton. He cannot have 11 penalties next year, and he won't. Now, the one thing I didn't look up, which maybe you could do while I'm doing this, Riley, is when did Terrion get the bulk of these penalties? And I'm going to guess it was before week 6, week 7, is when he had the majority of his 11 penalties. There was maybe 2 or 3 after that. And the reason why that's important, because as a rookie, you're learning. And from day one, he was getting flagged after flag after flag. And you know what? A lot of them didn't make sense. But it also, I think, honed in Terrion Arnold's ability to say, okay, I get it now. I see what the refs are calling. I need to play a little bit differently. But he didn't really play differently. He was always hip to hip the majority of the time. He was always in a position to drop a receiver where they stood, where they caught the ball. And those, to me, are far and away a better measurement of a rookie's ability and talent level than saying he got some penalties, he's not that good. Well, if he wasn't in the area to make that play and that play was going for more yards, then you'd be really pissed off. And so I'm glad that he was there to make a play and try to go after the ball. And the key stat that you pointed out, I didn't even realize this. He had 26 passes defensed in college in 25 games. Tell me another corner that is able to come up with a PBU every single game, and sometimes more than one in a game. That's an incredible feat. That just tells you that his vision, his instincts, is exactly why Brad took him. But we'll get to that. So 11 penalties, of which 3 were holding, 7 were pass interference, and he had 1 that was an other penalty. I'm not sure what it was. He had 1,023 snaps in 2024. So out of a total of 1,095 snaps, he played 94% of the snaps this season. And this is mostly regular season stats that I'm giving you. His best game, in my opinion, was Week 18 versus the Vikings. Hands down, best game I've seen out of Terrion all season. 74.1. Yes, we will use PFF for this because, or for part of this, there's like 8 different stat companies that I use, and they're part of this. So 74.1 grade in that game. That was his best grade of the season. And he covered none other than Justin Jefferson on a large majority of his assignments. And I think that that's huge because Justin didn't have a good game at all. Neither did Jordan Addison. But you know what? Neither did Sam Darnold. He didn't have a great game either. So maybe if Sam Darnold was on and he was more pinpoint with his throws, maybe it's a different story. But it wasn't. Stats per PFR, Pro Football Reference, would say that he only missed 4.8% of his tackles. That's 3. He missed 3 tackles the entire season. He had 17 stops. He had a 55.6 completion rate against. He had 9 pass breakups on the season. So, won every other game. Pretty good as a rookie. Passer rating allowed, 93.7. I would love to see that lower, especially in the second season. I think that number has to be driven down into the 70s. I would be cool with. I think that would be a much better passer rating for him. Mind you, being the number 2 corner for the Lions, he was going to get a lot of the targets anyway. He was targeted a lot. He started 16 to 17 games. I don't know why he didn't start a game midway through the season. I don't know if it was to injuries. It might have been to injuries. He might have been hurt. Coming back off, I think he might have been coming back off a game where they didn't start him and then he went in because they wanted just to see he was going to be okay, right? Now that included the postseason, of course, or did not include the postseason, 16 to 17 games. He averaged 3.5 yards of yak. Again, that's a pretty damn good number. You're not letting guys go for more than 3.5 yards beyond their catch. That's pretty good. Now, what did the Lions give up to get Terrion Arnold? I guess that's the biggest question. Was it worth what we gave up? Well, the Lions gave up a first-round pick, number 29, and a third-round pick, number 73. And in exchange, they got pick number 24 and a round 7 pick in 2025. Somewhere around the 210s probably from the Cowboys. Now, who did the Cowboys pick with those picks? Well, they got Tyler Guyton, who had a terrible season, and Cooper Beebe. I don't even know if he played. Now, Terry didn't have the breakout season that we wished or wanted for, but I think that there's more to this story. And it should tell you that his season by any means was not terrible. And I said from the very beginning of this year that Terrion was going to have his mistakes. Don't get down on the guy. Because if you get down on the guy and you infect his, emotions, right? You infect his confidence, that's just going to make it way worse. And you know what? I didn't see a ton of hate going his way. Now, I'm not all over social media like everybody else is, but I didn't see a ton. I didn't see a lot of articles that were negative. I didn't see a lot of videos that were negative. Everyone just kind of laid off Terrion to a degree. And that was the smart move because his confidence remained and he felt like every day he could go out and make a play. Now, what were the other options that were available other than Terrian? And this is where we're going to start to get into, did it make sense? The hottest name that was floated around was Nate Wiggins. Now, he was the absolute next cornerback off the board, pick 30 of the first round. And I know what you're thinking already, but, Nate Wiggins' grade is better. And his weekly performance was better than Terrian Arnold's on most games. So Brad Holmes completely missed on this pick. And that is why PFF is good for just about nothing on the majority of days that it's good for. It's good. It gives you a good snapshot, but you have to dig deeper. You have to watch tape. You have to understand the stats and figure out what they're looking at, because not every time is it going to make sense. It's just not. So here are the facts that I know to be true right now about Nate Wiggins. He had 9 penalties. Terrian had 11. Well, I don't think that 2 more penalties is that big of a deal. Well, 3 of those were for holding. Well, 3 of Terrian's were for holding. 3 of them were for PI to Terrian's 7. So he beat Terrian in that game. But he also had 1 for incidental contact, and 1 for offsides, and 1 for, what's UR? I don't know what that one is. But anyway, he had 9, of which 7 of those penalties were just like a holding, illegal contact, or pass interference, to Terrian Arnold's penalties, which he had 10. So 7 to 10. I don't think 3 penalties are going to make or break your season. So Nate Wiggins, just as bad. But here's the kicker. Nate also did it on like a third less snaps. Terrian had 1,023 snaps, and Nate Wiggins had 769. He only played in 67.9% of the total snaps that the Baltimore defense played in that season. Now, his best game, coincidentally, was also Week 18 versus the Browns. He was targeted 5 times. He only allowed 2 catches for a 40% catch rate and had a pick 6 in that game. Well, there's the underlying factor, right? A lot of people are saying, well, he didn't get any picks. Terrian didn't get any picks all season. But Nate did, and he got a pick 6. He must be better than Terrian Arnold. All right, let's compare this. Missed tackles. Nate Wiggins was 10.8% missed tackles. Terrian Arnold, 4.8. I'd rather have a guy that can tackle. Terrian had 17 stops. Nate Wiggins had 11. Now, mind you, that missed tackle percentage is also on a lower snap count, so that tells you that he's missing more tackles than what Terrian is. 50% completion percentage or completion rate for Wiggins, 55.6 for Arnold. I don't think 5.6% is going to make or break a season for anybody. Now, if you're talking 10, 12, 13, 14%, that's in a different category. Much different category. 8 pass breakups for Nate Wiggins. Terrian had 9. Passer rating against, again, for Terrian Arnold was 93.7. Nate Wiggins, 66.7. So he had a much better passer rating than Terrian Arnold. But who did Wiggins guard mostly? Who did he defend? Well, it clearly wasn't the number ones. All right, you had Marlon Humphrey in there and others. They had to switch around that Baltimore defense quite a bit because it wasn't even a factor for Nate Wiggins at the beginning of the season because he didn't play. He didn't start in the beginning. He didn't start until after week 4. He started 8 of 17 games, including 2 in the postseason, which meant he only started 6 games in the regular season. Again, these stats are Pro Football Reference. He missed 2 games, week 2 and 8. Terrian didn't miss any. And his average was 3.39 yards per catch for yak yards. So right in line with Terrian Arnold. Now, the defensive rankings for Baltimore, overall, when I look at, what did they have over there? Marlon Humphrey was the number 4 ranked overall cornerback on the season. An 83.9 coverage grade. So he was the most elite corner they had. Clearly playing, guarding, defending the number 1 receivers. Obviously, Nate Wiggins is going to get more opportunity, right? He's going to get targeted a little bit more. because he's not going up against the number ones. When I look at other, and we'll talk about this, I know Riley will bring some things up, but when we look at other corners, you know, how does Terrion Arnold stack up with his rookie season versus others, you know, in the last few seasons? And we're going to talk about that. But here's where I want to go next is, why was Wiggins not a fit for Detroit? I don't know if everybody really pays attention to the things that I try to pay attention to when I evaluate a player. The first thing I'm looking at is, do they fit? I don't care about their culture. I don't care about their identity. I don't care about any of that stuff in the beginning. In the beginning, it's tape. Are you running the same defense that we're currently running? Do you fit? Because if you don't even check that box, it's harder for you to cross over and learn new things as a rookie and have a great season. Clemson ran a 4-2-5 hybrid scheme. Lions also ran a 4-2-5 at times, but that was not their traditional. They ran out of the 4-3 base. We ran out of the 4-2-5 in the nickel very few times compared to what I think that we should have been in. But that'll also tell you, which means that Clemson primarily relied on a zone defensive scheme, not a man defensive scheme. They didn't even frequently use a man scheme at all. They would likely, however, incorporate some man schemes and elements that were situational depending, you know, on which opponent or game scenario they had that week. Of course, they would have some man involved, but it's not their primary look. Their primary look was having 5 DBs on the field, not 4, 5. Wiggins seemed to excel in off-man coverage. I clipped a whole bunch of video that I was going to play for you, but then I decided not to because I'm going to put it into a regular video. That way I know if it gets taken down, I don't care. He was in off-man coverage in way more than he's not. Let's just put it that way. It's probably 70-30. He's in off-man coverage more than 5 yards, oftentimes more than 7 yards. That fits into the Ravens' defensive style, as the Ravens run a 3-4 defense, which gives them more coverage in the middle of the field and faster coverage with outside linebackers that can actually cover. The Ravens were in 3-4 or cover 6. So they were in cover 3 or 4 or 6 more than 70% of the plays that they called in 2024. So let's talk about Nate Wiggins' pick 6 for a moment. Go watch the video for yourself. During a Browns offensive play, it was a pick play. Wiggins was in a zone on a choice route between either Elijah Moore or Jerry Jeudy. Bailey Zapp here. Come on, Bailey threw the pick 6 ball. He threw it right in the middle of the receivers. One going one way, one going the other. Nate Wiggins right there. Basically threw it right into his hands. Wiggins put himself into a good position. He did. He made a nice jump, but this was a badly thrown ball, and the receivers were not even close. They weren't looking. Had he been, up against a professional NFL team, not the Browns, this doesn't happen. Not trying to take anything away from the kid, but I'm just saying that there's more to this than meets the eye. So why did Brad Holmes make the right choice here? Or did he? Well, back in mid-November, the Ravens had one of the worst passing defenses. The tape and the numbers do not lie. When in cover 2, 3, or 4, or cover 6 in 2024, the Ravens allowed a league-high 16 attempts of 20 or more air yards, over the entire league. A league-high 28 targets for 534 yards. Only the Indianapolis Colts allowed more. A league-high 4 touchdowns, tied with the Los Angeles Rams and the Houston Texans. No interceptions taken away. A league worst passer rating of 141.4. That's damn near perfect. You're 13.4 points away from being perfect, or 12.4 points away from being perfect. And a league worst passer EPA allowed of plus 32.32. So that tells me right there, probably made the right choice. But you can't blame the entire passing defense on one guy, Nate Wiggins, can you? I mean, Marlon Humphrey was the number 4 overall rated corner in this league this year. But Wiggins didn't play early, like I said earlier. It took until the defense being that terrible, right, through the first several weeks of the season. And against, the pass, I mean, they were bottoms of the league. And then three DBs, go to IR. I think 2 went in August and then 1 more during the season. And he finally got some meaningful playing time. Whereas Terrion started from day 1. Now, he was a full-time starter after week 4, but he still didn't log full-time starter reps. He played in about 2/3 of the reps that were available. Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens, they were the starters. Jalen Davis went down before week 4. They lost their starting nickel back before October 1st, and that moved Humphrey to nickel, and then starting left corner is where Wiggins took over. Excuse me. So the question is man versus zone and personnel groupings. Why man scheme corners make sense? A man-on-man. This is why Brad made the right decision. We run a lot of man. A man-on-man defense scheme helps shut down offenses by allowing the defense to focus on guarding specific offensive players with their best defenders, effectively limiting the impact of the opponent's most skilled players and forcing them to work harder to get open shots. Thus, it just really disrupts the offensive flow and it creates more difficult scoring opportunities. So Brad made the right choice. He brought in a guy that he knew was going to fit. And he knew he was going to fit well because he was a type of a corner that was a man style of corner that excelled in man. If you can excel in man, you have a better opportunity at doing much better and excelling in off man when needed to, be in a zone. So where we're going to go to next is, I guess I'm going to go over to Riley right now because I've said enough. And there's a lot more we're going to get into. We're going to compare this guy to Sauce Gardner, Quinton Mitchell, Devin Witherspoon, and just see where else it makes sense here. Where else does this play out if he made the best choice, and why you shouldn't be worried about Terrion Arnold's first season. We'll also talk about the players that were taken after Terrion Arnold, and would it have made sense for the Lions to bring in somebody else? So I guess my first question back to you, Riley, based on what you just heard, agree or disagree, but based on your research, any analysis you've done over the weekend, what are your assessments on Terrion Arnold's first season? Would you have done anything differently? Would you have done the same thing as Brad, and why? And who else, I guess, would have been on your radar had they not taken Terrion Arnold?
I would not have done anything differently. I think that part of what Brad Holmes does, and it's hard to quantify, but we always hear, they got to be cut from a certain cloth. The DNA of the person, the player, it's all part of it. And so it's hard to, no matter how Terrion Arnold would have played this year, I would have had to believed there is a reason why they chose him. It wasn't just, we got to get another defensive back from Alabama. It was, we want this defensive back from Alabama. Terrion Arnold, he came into a situation where, look, he was the first or second best rated corner going into the draft. Now, because the first 14, 15 picks were all offensive players, normally the first or second best player at a position is going to be a top 15 pick. So you kind of got him a little bit later. And as Brad Holmes said earlier, it was a position of need. We all knew going into the draft, we need to get a defensive back. It seemed like that was the number one need. But Terrion goes to a very unique situation where you're a really good player, but the team you're going to is already good. So as a rookie, he's assuming insane responsibility. He played by far the most snaps of any cornerback on the team. And he's a rookie, a team that had Super Bowl aspirations, that won 15 of 17 games. You asked earlier about his stats. 8 of his 11 penalties happened weeks 1 through 4. So the last, 12, 13 weeks of the season, he only had a few more penalties at that point.
It was 8?
He had 8, 1 through 4.
So I could feel it. I knew I was a little bit correct there, that the majority happened early. So he had 3 penalties from week 5 to 18.
You can live with that. Absolutely.
He learned pretty quickly then,
Exactly.
I would say. Yeah. All right,
Exactly.
keep going. I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good, man. So now we'd look at it and say, well, he didn't have any interceptions. Okay, that's fine. I think if we said who are the best cornerbacks in the NFL today, the first two names that come to mind, Sauce Gardner, Pat Surtain. Sauce Gardner, his rookie year, had 60 solo tackles. He had 2 interceptions. He had 33 receptions allowed on 73 targets. Now that's 50.6%. Terrion Arnold had 48 solo tackles, didn't have any interceptions. He had 56 receptions allowed on 90 targets. So that's 55.6%. Now, you said it best last night, Will. We're talking 5% different. That would be a concern if it were 20% of a difference, right? But 5% of a difference on completion, you know, on 90 targets thrown my way versus 73 thrown his way is very comparable. Pat Surtain had 49 solo tackles as a rookie, so 1 more than Terrion did. He did have 4 interceptions, and he allowed 49 receptions on 96 targets, so 51%. So these guys are all very similar statistically, which doesn't tell the whole story, but it does tell a lot, right? You can gain a lot from the stats. I think that Terrion Arnold was the right pick. Now, you could say, other than Nate Wiggins, a corner that could have been you could argue they could have taken would have been Cooper DeJean from the Philadelphia Eagles, which is ironic because they also got Quinyon Mitchell. Cooper he finished the year with an 82.7 overall grade, which was 4th out of 223 cornerbacks. So that's pretty damn good. He had a run defense grade of 90.8, which was 2nd. Had a very, very good season, obviously. So you could argue that Cooper DeJean would have been a great pick there. But Brad Holmes said at his end of the season press conference speaking on Terrion Arnold, this is from the Detroit Free Press. He says, "We have very high expectations for him going forward. We all know how he's wired. He's wired the right way. He's long, he's athletic, he's got instincts, he's tough, he'll tackle. And so all those reps are just going to improve his confidence even more." You made reference of it too, that Terrion, his best game might have been the game against Minnesota with everything on the table. Last game of the season, Sunday Night Football, Minnesota at Detroit. Terrion Arnold gives 3.3 yards on 4 receptions in the playoffs against Washington. And then in that game against Minnesota, the playoffs, Terrion Arnold, he allowed just 3.3 yards per catch on 4 receptions in the playoff game against Washington. And then the Week 18 game against Minnesota for the NFC North Championship, didn't give up a single completion. So now he got hurt in that game, but the point is his play improved as the year went along. If he had 11 penalties and 8 of them were from Week 10 on, you'd be concerned. But he's trending in the right direction. I think that Terrion Arnold was absolutely the right pick. I'm confident that they took the right player, the right person for this team, this culture, this particular group of players. I absolutely believe that Terrion Arnold was the right selection at that spot for Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions.
I think it was too. There was a good question in the chat wanting to know, how many times the Lions, were in press man versus an off man. And I know that I looked that up and I know that I had that ready and I don't see where it is. I had that number. And I know, I'm pretty positive that the Lions were in a man style of defense about 60% of the time. I know I wrote this down. I know I wrote it down. Why don't I see it?
It's a great question. Who asked the question here?
I don't know. It's back a little ways.
In the chat here. Gary Van Gorder said, I think Terrion Arnold did a damn good job of being a rookie. He, along with the other defensive backs, had to cover a lot longer without a pass rush. The other aspect of this, Will, and I'd like your thoughts on this, because as I, can read off stats from Sauce Gardner and Pat Surtain, that's all good and well, but we have to remember the bulk of the Lions starting defense by week 18, when Terrion had his best game of the season, was out with injury. How much better would his rookie season have been if the unit as a whole was still intact, right? If you still had a Aiden Hutchinson, if you still had a Lee McNeil out there.
I think that's a big part of it.
Absolutely.
I think that when so people in the chat have said things, well, the certain teams had, better pass rush and they had more sacks. And I get it. How many of those are coverage sacks? How many of those are coverage sacks by the Ravens or by the Eagles or by the Chiefs or by the Broncos? By the Broncos. Think about it. Pat Surtain, one of the best corners out there, and the Broncos led the league in sacks. That's not a mystery.
Right. Yeah.
That is not a mystery. And I hate that some people discredit the backfield, the DBs, the secondary, and they just want to address the front end. Look, you get the best 4 defensive linemen in the league on the team. And guess what? You're going to get the same result unless you have a, complementary DB room that can hold. Because it's been said time and time again, it's been tracked over and over and over. Quarterbacks have at least 2.5 seconds to get rid of the ball. And it is very infrequent that even the best top 10 edge, top 10 DTs in the league, their average sack time is 3 seconds or more. If you give a quarterback 2.5 seconds, he's going to dice you up.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Jared Goff is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of them. And he doesn't even have wheels. He's got broken giraffe legs. And he's able to stand in the pocket and deliver in 2.5 seconds.
Yep. That's what Stafford did week 1 against the Lions this last year. He was getting the ball and throwing it out. They only got him, I think, twice that whole game.
Right. And I don't care if you got him 10 times. He's still going to get the ball out. And if you don't have a secondary that can hold up and give your edge time to work, because these are also professional athletes on the offensive line, unless they're third stringers that you're going up against, your first and second string can more often than not hold it down. And it's not very frequent that your offensive line goes down where it's totally depleted across the line. If you're 75 or, 70% intact across the offensive line, you're doing pretty good. If you lose both tackles, yeah, you're going to be in some trouble. But it doesn't happen a whole lot. And even if it does, we have seen, where our own defense has had trouble against third and fourth string tackles. Obviously, Aiden had the majority of his sacks this season against one team that had third string tackles in. So there's that, right? You can get a bunch of sacks. What did they do? Were they meaningful? You still need to have a very good secondary. I want to find the stats, but here's what I do know. That on first down, well, that's not going to tell me what I need. I don't know where I put this now. Check my email.
You're looking for the how often they were playing press?
Yeah, press versus man. I want to say it's at least 60% the Lions are in man. At least 60% they're in man. They were in zone very, very infrequently, and I had all of these numbers, and I don't know why it's not on my sheet. But let me throw this at you. Here's the reason why the Lions run a lot of man. Oh, here we go. Defense. Here we go. Personnel tendencies. All right, here we go. Detroit Lions. We're in the 2024. Nope, I want defense. Why is this giving me offense? I could care less about. I don't get it.
While Will's looking that up, J-Mo, Lion King, Jay Cruz, and I think we already said hi. Of course, Trace, Peter Van Larhoven. We have to hope that Kirby doesn't hold out this year. We absolutely do.
This is not telling me what I need.
Whoever asked that question is, I know by like 1 o'clock today, I'll be at work and get a text from Will, and he'll have all of this stuff figured out. He'll have the case will be solved.
I have it all. I mean, I have it all in front of me. It's on Summer Sports. They have it all. They have the tendencies, offense and defense, and I had it all last night. Let me just whittle this down by the Lions. But it's still throwing up the formations, and it's throwing up, 11 personnel, which I don't care about the 11 or 12 personnel. All I want to know is man versus zone, and there's some stats that don't exist. Like, I've been emailing some of these stat companies all weekend, trying to have them help me find certain stats. Like, I wanted the stats of how often did this corner match up against this receiver, and then I can whittle it down and find out what happened. How good was Terrian up against Justin Jefferson? How good was he up against whomever else, right? And they just don't exist. They don't have these stats for some reason, and I emailed everybody, and I can't believe they got back to me over the weekend, but they did. So anyway, I had it, and I want to say the number was about 60% that the Lions were in man. So just thinking about that, I mean, if you're in man the majority of the time, we see the Lions in man usually on first down, right? And if it's third and long at some point, I mean, yeah, they're pinning their ears and they're going, right? They're not going to take a chance. They're going to blitz. We blitzed like 54% of the time or 55% of the time. And it's just crazy that when you're blitzing that much, you're leaving your corners on an island. When you're blitzing that much.
Yeah, you're trusting them.
So they're in man. When you're blitzing, you're in man. You're not always in zone. So anyway, we kind of got off a little bit. So your question was, how much different of a situation would it have been defensively, had the Lions been healthy? And I think that is a big part of this. I think that you have to look at every scenario with a team and their rookies and how they performed. But I would say even without here's where I'm more impressed. I'm more impressed that Terrian had this good of a season with such a banged up defense. He watched all of his guys that he went to war with in the summer go down. And for the most part, everyone that stayed healthy was in the DB room until like the last 4 games. And then Carlton goes down, and then Amik goes down. And the fact that he gave up, 3.3 yards on 4 catches? In the divisional round?
Yep.
He's the only one out there, right? You had Kirby, and Dorsey's gone. We had Vildor. They attacked the hell out of Vildor. But yeah, I'm more impressed. So let's talk about this for a second. So who was after Terrian that would have made sense, right? Who's after Terrian? And let me go to the draft result. Swallowing like crazy this morning. All the medicine they gave me, man, yesterday really screwed me up. Let's go to the draft result here. So first round, Lions are at 24. They take Terrian Arnold, right? Now, after Terrian Arnold, you had Jordan Morgan. Well, he didn't even play this season, really. Graham Barton, I know he had injury issues. And then he was pegged to be the center this season for the Bucs. Had a decent season. Darius Robinson, he was hurt. I mean, he was high on just about every Lions roster as far as, who we wanted for an edge rusher. He was high on mine, but I didn't expect the Lions to go edge. And matter of fact, I posted my draft notes on the community chat because I saved that stuff for a reason because I like to review it once in a while, but I called it, that we were going after a corner. So Darius Robinson had a terrible season. Xavier Worthy. So there's a receiver. Did we need a receiver? Not really. Tyler Guyton, terrible season. I don't even know that he played for the Cowboys really a whole lot. I don't think he did. Matter of fact, let's see.
The one that sticks out to me, and I mentioned it, would have been DeJean, who went number 40 to Philadelphia. Again, you mentioned a receiver. I guess you could have, you'd have loved to see like a Ladd McConkey on the Detroit Lions, but again, it wasn't as big of a need. And McConkey.
Well, there's two things. There's two things with Brad Holmes. He says that he does not draft needs. He only drafts best player available. Best football player on his board is what he drafts. So that's why I would never expect him to go for a need. He takes care of the needs in free agency. Let me back up for a second. Darius Robinson. If we were to regrade and kind of take a look at the first round draft picks, he had a injury-riddled rookie year. And he appeared on 184 snaps the whole season. And out of 120 of those snaps, this is where I think that this is a better stat for him, even though some people would think differently. Out of 120 pass rushing opportunities that he had 2 pressures. That's it. 2 pressures. I don't know how many sacks he had. I don't know if he had any. I didn't go as deep into him because, I mean, that is a guy that we would have loved to have had on the edge, right? I just don't think that it was a need once you looked at the fact that we already had Davenport. So we knew that the Lions weren't going to go edge. They were going to backfill with everybody that they already had. He had 1 sack. So he had 1 sack on the season. He only played in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games. He saw the field, 184 snaps. He had 1 sack. So if I were to do the math, most defenses, let's just say they see 1,200 snaps. You divide that by 184. That means that he would have had about 6.5 sacks in his rookie year if he played a full season. Maybe he would add a few more in there. So he would have probably been a decent rookie, right? He probably could have been much better prepared had he, been working with the Lions, but we'll never know. Then there's, after that, you have no receiver makes sense. I'm not even going to talk about them. Offensive line didn't make sense. Not even going to talk about them. Nate Wiggins, I've already talked about. So you have Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette. I mean, there's nobody after him in the first round that makes any sense. So let's skip to the second round. Who would you have brought up out of the second round? Keon Coleman? Again. Lad McConkey? No. How about Rook Ororo? How about Rookie? I loved Rookie. I thought that Rook was going to be one of the best, bright, shiny draft pieces of this draft. And I still think he will, but I think he's also a little bit raw. He's going to take a little bit of time, and that's okay. I would have taken him all day long, but not over Terrion Arnold. We needed a plug-and-play guy for day one. We did not need a guy that was going to somehow get worked into the defense. Very versatile, right? Defensive lineman. When you look at his stats for the season, he's got such a difficult name to spell. Takes me a while.
Rook, yeah, it's a hell of a name. Rook Ororo.
Can't even believe I said Ororo the first time.
You nailed it, dude. Got it. But I guess a good way to look at this too is, okay, if I just asked you right now, would you trade Rook for Terrion? You wouldn't, right? Or if they had taken Rook and had the same exact statistics, we'd be doing the opposite. We'd be looking at this and saying, damn, man, we could have taken Terrion Arnold.
So Rook he only played in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games. So he missed like the first 4 weeks. Then he missed like the middle 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 7 weeks, whatever it was. And he only got in a handful of games. He had 0 sacks, 6 tackles. Not a good season. Not a good season. But you know what? I expect this dude to shine. I bet you Rook he's going to be balling in his second year as long as he stays healthy. All right, how about Drazon Newton? We needed a defensive tackle. That is one guy that I would have taken. That is one guy that I would have taken in the first round. But again, the question is, would I have taken him over Terrion Arnold? Unequivocally, no. I wouldn't have. Now, he had a decent season. He played in just about every game, right? I mean, excellent year for Washington. Obviously, he's behind, some really good defensive front athletes over in Washington. His scores were terrible. I mean, just absolutely terrible on the season. The conference championship game, that was his best game, believe it or not. That was his best game of the year. Didn't get any sacks, but that was his best game score-wise. He had 2 sacks on the season. He had 23 tackles, like 16 hurries. 23 total pressures, 2 sacks, 16 hurries. So, good season, not great. But again, when you look at the defense that we already had assembled, we had DJ Reader signed. we're not bringing in a DT. I mean, you got to read the tea leaves, right? If Brad Holmes has already settled this up in free agency, you're not going to be taking those players in the draft. At least not right away, other than when it came to the corner position, because again, you get into a situation like this year, where you don't have anybody signed. So we knew that he was going to go young. There was no reason not to go young. And again, the roster roulette that I put together speaks to all that. And so far it's been spot on. Okay, so who after that? In the second round? Where'd my second round just go?
Yeah, it's only one name that stands out to me. I guess maybe I know you like a certain player that went number 42 to Houston.
So Braden Fisk, that is a guy that I would have brought in. But again, I can't say that I would have brought him in over Terrian. Cooper DeJean, look, I was not high on him. I said that he wasn't going to be a first-round pick. Everyone had him as the best corner in the draft. He's having a good season. I do like his play, and I like his hard-nosed football style. I just don't think he fits the style of defense that we play, even though this dude is just, I mean, he's as vicious as they come back there. And he can flip-flop corner or safety, and I love that versatility. But when I think you look at a corner like Terrian Arnold that has, in my opinion, the best attributes, and I'm not just saying this because I said that Terrian was going to be our pick, but I'm saying this because when you look at his attributes as a player and his confidence and his attitude and the grit factor, the culture, right? I mean, how he was brought up and just what he embodies as a human, as a person, this dude clearly was the right pick. There's nobody else except for Kamari Lassiter. Kamari Lassiter would have been my only other choice. Hindsight 2020. Kamari Lassiter. All the other guys that I mentioned and talked about, I had them much higher on my board as potential first round fits. I knew we were taking a corner, but Kamari was not on my list, as he just wasn't. Not that early. The Texans stole this dude. Now, maybe he had a really lucky first season, but Kamari Lassiter, in my opinion, is amazing. Let's take a look at his season real quick.
Let's see, while Will looks that up, let me jump in here. Let's see. Jay-Z, he was the right pick for need and player. We got lucky. For the first 15 picks or whatever were all offensive. Yeah, right. Yeah. And I'd be curious.
This whole draft was nuts the way it started.
Yeah, it was very unique, very unorthodox. When the announcement was made that the Lions had traded up, and I remember going into the draft, Brad Holmes was, because obviously the draft was in Detroit. It was, I can't promise everybody, we may trade out of the first round. So it would be this buzzkill because it would, they sit and wait all night and then the Lions don't make a pick. Obviously, they end up ultimately trading up. I wonder, did everybody think, okay, it's got to be Terrion? Because Quinion was off the board at that point. Would be curious what people thought when that trade was announced.
So when we speak about, the other, I don't think we went over this. When we speak about the other players in their rookie years. So Kamari's season, I'm just going to blow by that right now. Let me touch on Sauce Gardner for a minute, because Sauce has been lauded as one of the best, if not the best corner in the NFL right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
2022, his first season in the NFL, he scored a PFF 87.9. His second season, an 88.6. In his third season, 70.2. Terrion's grade was better this year. So let's take a look at his grade. I'm sorry, his performance in 2024. How many interceptions did he get?
1, was it?
I don't know why this is not blowing up nice and big for me. Everything is like hidden. And this is on a huge screen. I don't what's up with PFF today? Tackling, coverage, interceptions. So this year he had 2. So Terrian has 0. Sauce has 2. And he's the best corner in the league. Interceptions don't make you the best corner. He had 14 passes broken up. Sauce Gardner did. How many did Terrian have? 11?
Let's see.
Terrian had...
What I do know is Terrion played the
9.
most. Yeah, he had the most snaps at the cornerback position on a team that won 15 games.
That's because not a lot of teams win 15 games. So, 9 pass breakups to Sauce Gardner's 14. I mean, I'm not saying that Terrian's better than Sauce, but what I'm saying is when you look at the stats, right? Sometimes the stats overweighs the play on the field to some people. That's why you have to look at both. And I'd, this more makes me feel better about Terrian Arnold when I look at his 2022 season. That's what we're talking about right now, is 2022 season. Sauce Gardner had 2 interceptions, 14 pass breakups, a 53.5 passer rating against. Terrian had a 93.7. But Sauce Gardner wasn't targeted at all. That's why he was, they were saying like he was having a bad season because nobody was throwing the ball at him. He got targeted hot and early, and then it slimmed down through the middle of the season. I mean, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games out of his first season that he was targeted 4 times or less in a game. 4 times or less. So he wasn't targeted. So he had 73 targets, 33 catches, 45.2 reception rate to Terrian's 54? 55.6. So yeah, he's 10% better. He didn't allow a few extra, receptions, but here's the difference. You spoke to it earlier. What about the rest of the defense?
Mm-hmm.
The Jets have had a top 4 defense in 2022. They had a top 4 defense this year, and they had a top 10 defense in 2023. And it's not just the corners. He also had DJ Reed, right? Who's also a top 10 corner working alongside him. So there's the difference. Now, Carlton Davis was a top 26 this year. Meek Robertson was a top 28 this year. So we had some pretty good guys working, but we didn't have a top 10, right? We didn't have a top 10 working. Well, we had a couple of good safeties. Put it this way. Does Kirby Joseph have the season he has without Terrian and Carlton doing what they're doing? Absolutely not.
It's a great point.
So Kirby took all the interceptions for everybody.
Yep.
They put him in the position to win.
Yeah.
By manning down their man, left Kirby open to play the field. All right, enough on Terrian. We could go into this all day because we went deep into this. Like Quinion Mitchell, I think you touched on. What about Devon Witherspoon? So he was my pick last year. And last year I said that Devon Witherspoon was going to be our guy unless he got snatched at number 5, and he did. Then I said the Lions were going to pivot. They were going to trade back to 12, and they were going to take Jahmyr Gibbs, and it all came true. And it was all put on tape well before the draft. So Devon Witherspoon, what did he do in his rookie year? Let's take a look.
He's so awesome too. I love that guy.
I love Devon Witherspoon. He's an amazing dude.
Watching him play, because they played Seattle, I think it was week 2, his Witherspoon's rookie year. And that, it was a game where Seattle won in overtime. But I just remembered, watching that guy so closely. And I text Justin Treese of Talking Football. I'm like, dude, like this guy is awesome, man. He is a great player. You could see why he would have been a guy that they targeted, but happy as hell that we got Gibbs and Laporta by Seattle taking him 1 pick ahead of where we could have.
So Peter, you're looking for my take on Ennis Rake-Straw. That's next. That's why I'm going to move off of this, and we're going to finish out on Ennis Rake-Straw, and we still have a whole show we haven't even gotten to. Crazy how it happens, right, Riley?
Just rolling, man. I love this show so much.
So Devon Witherspoon as a rookie, he had 1 interception. He allowed 4 TDs. He had an 87.6 passer rating against. Again, Terrian Arnold had a 93.7, so very close. He allowed 174 yards of yak on 39 receptions. So that's going to be very close to what Terrion Arnold did, right around, 4 yards a catch of yak. Pass breakups, he had 10, Terrion had 9. Very similar season of what Devon Witherspoon had his rookie year to what Terrion Arnold had. So here's at my end of the day, here's my take on Terrion Arnold. We can't cry over spilled milk because we didn't get an edge rusher. Okay, put it to bed. We can't judge or evaluate. I hate the word judge. I don't know why I even say it. We can't evaluate Terrion Arnold against anybody else but rookies and what they did in their rookie season. Being a rookie corner is one of the hardest positions in the league, next to tight end and center and quarterback. Those are like the 3-4 top, hardest positions in the league. And in my opinion, and many others, is safety, corner, tight end, center, quarterback. Those are your top positions. And if you ask anybody what is the hardest position, oftentimes they're going to say it's center and tight end because they have to know so much. Like the tight ends have to know all of the calls and all of the route tree. That's really tough to do as a rookie. But a corner on an island, having to go up against these guys, running at them 1,000 miles per hour and having to know all these calls and where to be and all the shifts and all the motions. I mean, they have to know it all. And not be able to communicate. I mean, they're not able to communicate with each other. It's all hand signals, body language for the most part. So anyway, Terrion was the right pick. There's nobody else that the Lions could have had. There's no one else that the Lions could have taken. Especially when you look at the first round, there's no one else that we were going to take. And we can't assume that we could have moved up. I expected a trade up. I was hoping we'd get to 21. And had the Lions got to 21, then you're talking Chop Robinson. You're still 2 places out of Jared Verse. Jared Verse would have been the only edge guy that I wanted. And then you had Quinn and Mitchell. So we will never know if Brad is telling us the truth that Terrion was his number 1 corner on his board. We will never know that. We can only take him at his word. But I would say if we got to 21, then we probably would have taken Chop. Turned out to have a really good season. All right, Ennis Rake-Straw. This one's going to be quick because why? Well, Ennis didn't play. So, again, this is the hindsight 2020 purview on what happened in Detroit Lions draft last year. So, Ennis Rake-Straw, let's see where he was picked. He was picked at pick 29, or I'm sorry, pick 61 overall, pick 29 in the second. And if you look at who was picked ahead of him, you have Cole Bishop, safety from the Buffalo Bills. You had Javon Bullard, safety out of Georgia, went to the Green Bay Packers. Marshawn Nealand, another, edge rusher guy that a lot of us were high on. Marshawn Nealand was at pick 24. The Lions obviously, were out of that play. We couldn't do anything. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. We didn't move to 61, right? That was part of our original pick.
Yeah, I think that was
like one of the only rounds we didn't move.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Brad Holmes was working extra. He always is, but.
Okay,
yeah,
so Renardo Green. Did Renardo Green have a better season than, Ennis Rake-Straw? Would he have been a better pick?
It's so hard to judge because, like you said, Rake-Straw didn't play a ton. There is a good corner that Jacksonville took, Jerrion Jones, at pick 96, who ended up having a good season by the end of the year. He finished 33rd in pass breakups with 6. He had 2 sacks, which was 3rd of all corners in the league. But so Jerrion Jones was good, but Rake-Straw it's just so hard to say because, again, we haven't seen him. I think he only played in 7-8 games.
I don't even know if he played that much, but I do know this. So Renardo Green did play quite a bit. He was targeted 70 times. He had a 62.9% reception rate. He had 9 PBUs. He had a 92.1 passer rating against. and he had 1 interception. So, I mean, for the 49ers, he had a pretty solid season. Stayed healthy. You know, prior to that pick being made, and a few weeks prior to that, there was an article that came out, some chatter, that the Lions should run in the other direction from Ennis Rake-Straw. And I did a video on it. And I was thinking, okay, why are they saying this? Why are they saying run away from Ennis Rake-Straw? Everything that I saw from him in training camp, in the times that he got in, preseason, I thought, man, this guy's going to be great in his second season. Right now, he's got a lot to fight to be on the field, right? He's got to go up against Carlton and Amik. He's not going to beat that battle. He's not going to beat out Terry and Arnold. So he's got to beat out 3 guys to make it onto the field. Well, Amik's going to play nickel. I don't think Ennis Rake-Straw is really going to be a nickel for us. He's 6 foot, 188. Could he play the position? Sure. But I think we have 2 guys that, between Brian Branch and Amik Robertson, that are going to handle that nickel slot, position. He's going to either be a number 2 or a number 3 corner on this team. Right now, in my opinion, before we even get another number 1 or 2, he's still number 3. I don't think that he's the bona fide starter next year because we haven't seen enough. But when we did see him, his best game was Dallas. But that's not saying much. He was targeted 3 times. He allowed 2 catches. Every time else he was targeted in the season, which was only 2 more times, there wasn't a catch. There was 1 catch. Oh, I'm sorry. There's 1 catch made. So I like his play style. I like his physical and aggressiveness. I like the way that he moves. He's very fluid. He mirror matches well, stays hip to hip, breaks on the ball well, has good instinct, but I haven't seen enough. So I have an incomplete grade for him, obviously, because he only was in a handful of snaps. I mean, he was targeted 5 times. That's not enough. It's not enough. So because of that, and because hindsight is 2020, then that's what we're talking about here. Did Brad Holmes make the right pick for this year? Not in 3 years, right? Not in 3 years. Did he make the right pick for this year? The answer is no. He could have taken Kingsley Suamataia out of BYU, offensive tackle. That would have helped us, and then we wouldn't have gotten Giovanni Manu. I'm good with that. I haven't seen Giovanni play yet, and that's the only reason why I'm good with that. Gio might step onto the field this year and just completely wreck everybody, and I hope he does. Renardo Green at pick 32. So, 3 slots back, he played an entire season, had a good season. So, yeah, I mean, there's other players that Brad could have taken if you back it up to the 3rd round. And, you pick somebody a little early, or maybe you trade back. Well, what about Andrew Phillips? Andrew Phillips had a decent season, did he not?
It's so interesting, too, because there was a time, and you make mention of the article there, where it came out saying Rake-Straw, they should run away from him. There was a time where he was often mocked to the Lions in the 1st round.
Yeah, as the first pick. See, I was always higher on Renardo Green and the guy that you just mentioned a minute ago. Jalen Jones. I was high on both those guys. Andrew Phillips had a good season. I mean, 96.1 passer rating against, 82% reception rate, both better than Terrian. He ended up with 1 interception. He didn't have any pass breakups, though, and that's concerning. So that means that he was probably in a lot of zone coverage with the Giants. I'm not for sure, but I'm just going to take that as it is until I would watch some tape.
Yeah.
But just because he doesn't have a ton of pass breakups would tell me that he's more in a zone. They're catching the ball, and then he's getting to him, especially when you look at yak yards. He gave up 297 yak yards on 41 receptions. So he's given up like 7 yards of yak per catch, which to me spells zone, right? Z-O-N-E. That's what it spells to me. And so these things when you watch tape, right? You know these things when you study these guys, and you can look at a stat and you could say, I know what that means, and then you go watch the tape and it confirms it. All right, how about a linebacker? We really needed a linebacker out of this draft, in my opinion, because if you look at this year, it is the worst position that we are in is in the linebacker room. Does this mean that this year Brad's going to double down on linebackers? Could be. Very well could be. I wasn't high on Braylon Trice. I wasn't high on Jonah Ellis, but I think Jonah Ellis had a fairly decent season. Would have been nice to see him come home, where his dad played.
Former Ute. I would have loved that, but I'm biased towards Utah players.
Yeah, so Jonah, I mean, he had 20 pressures on the season. He had 6 sacks, 14 quarterback hits.
He would have been awesome.
Now, in coverage, he sucks, but yeah, I mean, he would have been decent, but 6'2", 246. I mean, he's prototypical linebacker size. To me, he's not an edge. He's an outside linebacker, inside linebacker. I don't really know what he played for the Broncos.
What all this does, though, this just makes me, it's funny how like every year I'm like, this is the most excited I've ever been for a football season. This is the most, especially the last couple of years with the Lions having the progress they've had. But I've never been more excited for a draft than I am this year's draft.
And so his size just confirmed it to me. His depth chart, he's a Sam linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
He's not an edge. I don't know why they have him listed as an edge, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I just was kind of going off on a side tangent there, just how excited I am. This just gets you so excited because now the wheels are turning and you're thinking about, okay, what are they going to do this year? What position are they going to take? What moves are they going to make? I'm damn happy to have Brad Holmes as the GM of the Lions. I'll say that for sure. I think we all are.
And I think that this exercise helps confirm a lot of that too, because there is not a better player that you can say, unless you're willing to really stack the offensive line. Okay, that could have been a move in the first round. But had you have done that, you really would have been hurting to find another number one corner. Brad said it himself. He thinks that he's really good at evaluating corners. He wanted to get one of the last guys that was training under Nick Saban. Nick Saban has produced some of the best corners to ever play the game. And I think that's why he finally pulled the trigger on it. But in years past, he had opportunity. He did. He could have moved up one step for Devon Witherspoon. He could have. It would have cost him probably a little bit more than he wanted to pay. That's why I know Brad is not an F them picks kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say it again. There's going to be some interesting changes to this roster. I do believe that there's going to be one high-profile trade. It's not JMO, but I think that there's going to be one high-profile trade. And I never did call or text anybody this morning. I'll get info by tomorrow. And I'll say this to that effect. Talking about JMO being traded. Look, I said it last year. I'll say it again because I haven't been wrong yet on this. Unless Justin Rogers and John McAroon and Jeff Risdon and Corey and all the other guys that are covering this team and that are inside the room, right? If they're not reporting on Brad Holmes' conversations, and thank you to who messaged me this morning on this information, then it ain't happening. I'm sorry. There's only one person that knows who Brad Holmes is talking to, and that is the other person on the other end of the line. That's it. There has never really been a leak out of Detroit, ever. There's a few things that get picked up from time to time, and I think that's why this year we've seen a change in how the media was done. There was a big change. I'm not going to go off on a tangent on that, but media may not have changed for them covering it inside, but it changed for everybody else. There was a change. So those leaks are kind of gone. I have a couple of people that work within the NFL that I work with and talk to, and they not work with, but you know what I mean? They give me information when I ask for it, but they will also tell me leaks don't happen. They just don't. So that's why you just don't see a lot of it coming out of Detroit. Otherwise, these guys would be talking about it. So I don't see anybody else in the second round that I would have taken that you're not down in the... I mean, you're down in pick 12. You're at pick 76. So you'd have gone from 61 to 76 to taking Jonah Ellis. And yeah, that probably would have been a good pick, but he was terrible in coverage, and we are already terrible in coverage. But he was able to blitz the quarterback. He was able to get to the quarterback. And again, hindsight 2020, all the injuries that we had, who would he have replaced this year? Who would have not made the roster? I think that they were fairly settled with who they were going to war with this year. And Malcolm Rodriguez would have been the only one that I think that would have been on the outs if they would have brought in a guy like Jonah. So, again, you'd have to go deep, trade away your pick, and settle for third rounders. You know, maybe they pick up a couple of picks. I don't know. The other guy that I really liked for a defensive tackle was Dwayne Carter. Now, he's at the end of the second round, though. That's a big reach, right? You're missing out on a lot. But again, there's not a lot between him. He had a terrible season. He didn't play a whole lot. He's always had some injury issues. I believe he played for Kentucky, if I'm not mistaken. He's from Kentucky.
He went to Duke.
Was it Duke? Okay, so yeah, arch nemesis there. But I did like his tape. And then Jalix Hunt, he was another one that was high on my list out of Houston Christian. Now, he went 94 overall. And matter of fact, where's the Lions pick?
I don't think they are you looking for the third round pick for the Lions?
Yeah.
I don't think they had one.
I thought we moved back into the third last year. I thought we did.
No, I think they lost that in the Carlton trade, I believe, right?
Yeah, but I thought we moved back up. Okay, Jalix Hunt. So he is someone that was high on my list. He had a fairly decent season. Sacks. He only had 3. As far as snaps, he had 320. So he played roughly a third of a season. But we could have used somebody that was 6'4", 248. And if you look at, you know, who the Eagles are utilizing right now, and you look at the Eagles depth chart, man, they're just kind of loaded. I like Jalix Hunt. He didn't have the greatest mock-ups, but I want to say, if I remember correctly, his combine was one of the better combines. If I remember correctly. I could be totally wrong, because I mocked a lot of guys. Jalix Hunt, he's definitely playing edge. He's behind Josh Sweat, according to the Eagles' official depth chart. I wouldn't have had him as an edge. I probably would have had him as an outside linebacker, but his movement skills have to be there. But then again, the Eagles only have 2 linebackers listed on their depth chart. I don't know why. They only have 2 linebacker positions listed, and that's probably because they're in a 4-2-5 base. Makes sense. They're in a 4-2-5 base. So, yeah, they have Nolan Smith Jr. listed as an edge. So they and Bryce Huff. So obviously they like the smaller, speedy edge guys, not the bigger edge guys. So anyway, that's my take on Ennis Rake-Straw. Look, it's too little too soon, right? We don't know enough. Too small of a sample size. You'll have to see more. I can only hope that he stays healthy in 2025 and beyond, and we get to see a lot more out of him this year. And then I think we'll be able to make a better, analogy as to how he's doing.
Yeah.
All right,
Yep.
So it's already after 10 a.m. What's your final thoughts, I guess, on the day? Or is there one article or not articles, or one topic you want to get to today before we head off?
No, I think
there was a couple of good ones you brought up.
Yeah. There was
if
one.
If you have time, great. If you don't, we can hit it tomorrow.
Yeah, I've got like 5 minutes here real quick. Do you want to hit it tomorrow, or do you want me to pull one up real quick?
Let's just do it tomorrow, because 5 minutes could turn into 50 minutes.
That sounds good. I think you're right on with Rake-Straw, though. I will say he's a player that, for better or worse, going into next year, he's going to be one of the players I'm more excited about seeing how he evolves and where he fits in with the team. And I just can't wait for free agency. I can't wait for the draft this year. I'd be super excited just as a audience member listening into the show, but then participating in the show here and seeing the level of detail that Will puts into this. And he's taking me behind the scenes and showing me kind of how he does things here. And it's improving my knowledge, I feel like, of the game of football. I just can't wait. I feel like we're ramping things up. Everything's getting enhanced here. Thank goodness the Lions are a good football team. I can't wait for everything that's around the corner, the draft, the construct of the team and then the upcoming season. You know, I was heartbroken 2 weeks ago, but I'm already back on the mend and ready to go. So
a couple of things. Yeah, I want to wind back just a quick second here. So Peter, he had mentioned Peter Van Larhoven when we were going through the Ennis Rake-Straw stuff here. He was talking about just 3 minutes ago here that we needed to look at offensive tackles. I can't really see all this stuff as we're going, but Riley, you got to bounce out. Are you good or what?
I got a couple minutes. Yeah,
okay. I just got a text. I thought maybe it was you.
No.
Yeah, I'm glad that we aligned there. That it was offensive tackle in the second round. If you weren't going to take a Meek, again, this is hindsight being 2020. That we just don't know what these guys are going to turn out to be. And here's where we stick our foot in our mouth, right? Is when Ennis Rake-Straw arrives in 2025 and he's put on a few extra pounds, right? Put up of muscle. And he's able to get in there and play. He's very vicious with his hands, and he really likes to play an aggressive style of defense. Not so much like a sellout style, but he's aggressive. He's getting his hands on guys, and I love it about his play. He just has to be on the field, and that is the one thing that concerns me after this season is he just couldn't get back, and like we can't have that with a second round pick that just can't make it to the field.
Yeah, that's the thing. You think of the Levi pick, you need production out of that round 2 pick. But Dave Burkett in the Detroit Free Press after that draft, he said, when Brad Holmes sat down with Ennis Rake-Straw on his pre-draft visit, it didn't take long for the Detroitlions general manager to see the one personality trait he requires in his football players. He said, I just kind of felt dog exuding out of him. So we talk about the personality, the person, not just the player. And that's an underrated aspect too, that because we haven't seen a lot of Rake-Straw on the field yet, but you have to trust that Brad Holmes, where he ranked him, how he evaluated him, it's the person too. So you got to believe he's going to be competing.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike P also had a good statement in here, and this is something I didn't give a ton of attention to. Rake-Straw, he was injured with a sports hernia before we drafted him. Maybe he wasn't healthy all year, so that's a great point by Mike P. You know, maybe when you start compounding some of these injuries, I think did Rake-Straw go through a core muscle surgery or the hernia surgery? I don't know if he actually had surgery or not, but it's been so long now. It's been almost a year. So, yeah, interesting. But a good point to bring up again that maybe he just wasn't fully healthy. And then, you know, he battled all sorts of different stuff. It seemed like every week was a different story, but we'll get into more tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're going to get into some free agency stuff. Later on today, I will be pumping some videos. I am feeling a little bit better. I just hope that it continues. My surgeon just called me, so I'm wondering what they want. All right. Well, that's it for today. Appreciate you, Riley. I'll be back tomorrow morning talking about free agency. There'll be a few positions we're going to talk about tomorrow. Probably defensive line and edge, I think, is what we have for tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. I think that's what I have for tomorrow. We'll start that. And we've got more Lions news, notes, and all sorts of stuff that we didn't even get to today. So it might be a little bit of later news coming out, but we'll at least talk about it. So that's it for today.
Right on.
Riley, we'll see you tomorrow.
We'll see you guys.
The Lions charge, ready for the fight. No more hearts and steadfast pride. Detroit spirit, we wear it white. Feel the drive, hear the crowds embrace. Rock the passion igniting the light through highs and lows. We'll stand as one.